Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of the Hip Hop Debate. My name is Paul. This is Kyle. Um, we are back. This is episode 2. If you happen to miss episode 1, you can find the video version on YouTube and the podcast version on all podcast services, whether that's Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. It should be available on there. And if it's not, let us know because we will make it available on there. So we are glad to have you back. Hopefully, if this is your second episode, you enjoyed the first one and want to keep hearing us talk about our views on hip hop and everything that goes along with it. So the topic of this episode, episode 2, is who are the top 5 most influential rappers of all time? We will get into this topic soon, but before that, we want to talk about what has been going on in hip hop the past week or so. So I'm going to start out with the new G-Eazy album. I don't listen to G-Eazy. I just figured I'd bring this up. So
Same.
There's that. All right, so we'll go on to the next thing. Same thing probably for this one. The new, do you know NBA Youngboy?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
I don't listen to him either, but he's getting more popular and popular. He released his new album this week. I don't listen to him, but I know that he was like a meme. People would just joke on him, and then now all of a sudden he's just people saying he's like he's gonna be like the next big thing because his emotions and his pain, I guess he really like portrays. So that's supposedly gonna be a big album. It probably will, at least for hip hop, probably go number 1 this week. So there's those 2 albums. Again, I don't listen to them, and I don't think you either listen to them as well. All right, so we'll go on to the next thing. Future and Gunna, did you hear their new single together?
No, I haven't.
It's called Too Easy, and it is just straight trap. Like, it's good though. It's Future's just being Future, which I know I like Future. I know you like Future as well. And then I'm a big fan of Gunna now. He's really grown on me. He feels like his flows, like his flows are some of the best in like hip hop overall right now. He's really, his lyrics are kind of, they're similar and same style and stuff, but his flows are just like really good. So that's a good song. I would definitely check that out. Cool. And also Joyner Lucas. Do you know who he is?
Yeah. Yep.
Him and J. Cole dropped a new single called Your Heart. And it's actually, I really like this song. I've never really listened to a project of Joyner Lucas's, but I've heard a couple of his singles or feature on like Eminem's newer albums. He likes him a lot. It's a really good song. They're actually taking 2 different roles in the song. Joyner is about like he's the guy that's cheating on his like significant other, his girlfriend, fiance, whatever. And then J. Cole's like kind of like the devil's advocate. Like, yeah, she's like, because it's about his girl leaving him or like cheating on him, but J. Cole's like the devil's advocate in terms of like, you were the one doing it first, you were cheating on her, how can you expect her to be faithful when you're not faithful, stuff like that. So, and I watched the music video last night, and it's actually really good. It kind of really they do a good job of portraying what they're saying on the song. And J. Cole, you ever see Guilty Conscious by Eminem and Dr. Dre?
Yeah. Yep.
It's similar to that in like that, not that they're both guilty conscious, but Joyner Lucas is the guy, and then J. Cole is like his guilty conscious in a way.
Okay. All right.
So it's pretty cool like that. So I would definitely check that out. And
cool.
Then did you hear the J. Cole remix of Drake's Pipe Down?
Yeah.
Heaven's EP?
That was fire.
Oh my God.
So fire.
Do you have anything to say on that before I go on a tangent about that?
Yeah, I wish Pipe Down was J. Cole's song and not Drake's song.
I know, right?
That's because I liked the beat on that song a lot when Drake came out with it, but it's like kind of like we talked about last week. Like I just I don't think Drake put in his best effort on that song or some of the other songs, but J. Cole just he just kills it. He kills it with his bars and his wordplay. So yeah, it was phenomenal. I was shocked. I was surprised that he was able to turn that song into like something good when we were all like kind of thinking like this song is not the greatest.
Yeah, and he made it. It's crazy because he made a Drake song better, and not even like an older Drake. Like it was released 2 weeks ago, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna." Yeah. Obviously, he had to get clearance from Drake and stuff, and Drake obviously was cool with it, but like, it's not a Drake song anymore.
No, it's not. And like I feel like I haven't had somebody do that in like a long time, like a while. Like I remember when we were growing up and Lil Wayne was like becoming big, like he used to do that on his mixtapes, like take somebody else's song and just make it better. And nowadays you don't really see people do that a lot, but like, you know, this is one of those rare occasions now where like he was able to take a song and just make it better. So yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, he I absolutely killed it. There's a point where he's like in the limo and he's talking about like Ferrari coupe velocity, and he has that flow for like 3 bars, and he kills it. And then he's talking about like coming in third place behind Kendrick and Drake, which it's true. He's like I guess he's cool with it, but obviously they're all the three, you know, at least from that generation, like the biggest artists, and they're all, I would say, in the GOATs. They're not like, you could possibly say any one of them is the GOAT, but they're all in like that GOAT conversation of, you know, top 5, top 10. They're all in there somewhere, wherever individually everyone ranks them. But it's compared to them. What were you gonna say?
I think he's right when it comes to Kendrick. I think he says Drake because him and Drake have a good relationship, but I think he knows that he's probably, in terms of just like rapping. I mean, Drake's a great rapper sometimes, but like J. Cole like is a much more like methodical rapper and a more conscious rapper than Drake. So I feel like he knows it, but like they're good friends, so like he's not gonna say it, you know. But he's go ahead.
Yeah, they're all in like different lanes, but they're all like, Kendrick is definitely very conscious, and then J. Cole to me is just as traditional as hip hop can get. And then there's Drake, who's a pop star. So they're all in 3 different lanes, but they all do what they do in their own lane very well. That's, I think, and then they all came up around the same 3 or 4 years. J. Cole and Drake were very similar timing. And then Kendrick kind of emerged maybe a few years later, but still in that same class, you could even say. And they're all, you know, I think Kendrick, I think by far is the most classic albums out of those 3, but J. Cole and Drake in their own right have some great albums as well. So yeah, it's but in coming, when I'm going back to him being in third place, it's hard because they definitely, I think, have both sold more than him. So in terms of like sales, he's definitely third, but just I think also popularity. Drake's obviously, we've talked about last week, and I just said he's a pop star, and Kendrick has really, when he drops, it's like it's also like a momentum shift in hip hop. He just commands the attention, kind of like Drake or Kanye, or that's probably the only other 2, maybe a Travis Scott even, but everyone else is like, and then obviously previous artists in their time obviously did that too, like Jay-Z, Eminem, Nas, but like currently it's probably just Kanye, Drake, and Kendrick, and then J. Cole is like on the cusp of that.
I would say like when you compare, like, because Kendrick and Drake are very different, like on different ends of the spectrum, you know, like Drake, like you said, Drake's like a pop star, and Kendrick is more like, you know, he's more like, you know, influential and like wants to like use his music to like send messages and make points and all that stuff. And I feel like J. Cole is like in the middle of those 2, you know, like he's very conscious about his rapping. Like, you know, he has great wordplay, and he, you know, likes to talk about political issues every now and then, like Kendrick does, but he's also like, he can also make like a good pop hit too, like Drake.
He can make a hit,
you know. So he's kind of like the middleman between those 2. And I feel like that's why when you consider like the 3 of them to be like the top 3 of like this generation, like that's why it's like you have one guy who can just rap about like very like deep stuff, and then you have another guy who is like just like a pop star, and then you have a guy who's like in the middle and kind of complements both of them, you know. So
definitely. I'm gonna make one more point before we move on to the next topic. J. Cole to me is the best like lyricist out of all of them, the best pure rapper. Because Kendrick, I think his albums are definitely better than J. Cole's, but he just doesn't like, I think just straight, like if you want like, to me, a feature besides Drake, because it's going to be a hit, but if you're talking about like, I want like 16 bars on a feature and just to kill it, I personally would take J. Cole. I think on features and just straight, like something like Heaven's EP, like he'll just rap his ass off, I think, better than the other 2. But Kendrick is more thoughtful, and he's trying to, like, similar to Kanye, he's trying to always have a point to something more in his lyrics, and Kanye's like on everything he's trying to make a point, but Kendrick, every song there's a point to it, or even every verse he does, there's a point to it. So Kendrick is everything he does is really good or great, but I think talking about like a verse or like a single, like just straight rapping, I think J. Cole is like definitely, to me, the best one out of those three for that.
Yeah, I would agree to an extent. I think that, you know, J. Cole, like he's a really good at like being a good rapper on like a single or like, you know, a feature. Like he can, like I said, he could take like that pop appeal that Drake has, but use like his great rapping to like keep it like, you know, keep it pop, but also like still like show off like your skills still. But I feel like Kendrick is more like I don't, there's not a lot of features on like that Kendrick is on that like I'm like I get wowed by. I mean, there are a few, you know, like Control, obviously, like the Big Sean Control, you know, and everything like that. But like I'm more interested in Kendrick when it's like his stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
it's a
so
whole artwork, piece of art or work of
yeah,
art.
yeah. And so I feel like in terms of like comparing Kendrick and Cole, like I think Kendrick can just keep an interest for longer. You know what I mean? Like there were a couple albums like before this new one that Cole came out with this year where like you know, I wasn't really feeling them, like, you know, because there were a lot of songs that were like the chorus was just like repetition, you know, like what was the one, like motivate, like he just kept going like that, you know. So like I do feel like sometimes like he gets like that writer's block or like, you know, doesn't really know like, you know, how to like make a good hook. But like Kendrick, if I'm gonna pick like somebody to like just keep me interested for like a whole album's worth, like I think Kendrick is a lot better than Cole there, you know. But in terms of like a feature or like just like, you know, making like a good rap single, like Cole can definitely beat him out in that. So
yeah, I agree. All right, so before we make the whole episode that, because I feel like we could talk about that all, that could be a whole episode itself, those three.
Seriously.
The Lil Nas X album, we texted back and forth a little about this week. I still only listened to it once, but I was pleasantly surprised. And we, me, Amanda, and her sister, Victoria, we went to see some apartments yesterday because we were thinking about moving. That doesn't matter. And Amanda was driving and she played that album and I listened to it kind of almost in full, I think, in the car. And I was, again, pleasantly surprised. I never, you know, he has the singles, you know, Montero, Industry Baby, obviously, Old Town Road, and he had that song, what is that, Rodeo with Cardi B, went on that 7 EP. But besides that, I never really like, and I still probably won't really listen to him much, but I was pleasantly surprised. I just saw him as a guy who made, you know, singles and very pop, and there was no substance. But listening to his album, he actually has some really good songs on there and really good melodies too he uses on there. Yeah,
I really liked the song Scoop. I thought that was really
with Doja Cat.
Yeah, I think that's a really good song.
He should use that in a Tostitos Scoops commercial. I guarantee they're going to be a commercial in the Super Bowl or later this year, where it's Scoop is going to be in a Tostitos Scoops commercial. Guarantee.
I could totally see that happening. I could totally see that. Yeah, I like that song. I like you. Like I was very surprised as well. I liked his 7 EP when it came out. So like, you know, I was going into this thing kind of like expecting to like it, but like I don't know if I expected to like it as much as I do. I love Industry Baby. I think that's a great song. But I also get like super distracted when I'm introduced to a Lil Nas X song through a music video. Like I can't focus on how good the song is because his music videos are so insane. You know, like
they're very there's a lot going on in them.
And I respect that a lot out of him, and I respect that he's using that platform to, you know, kind of, you know, he came out, you know, so like he's using that platform to kind of like advocate for it. You know, definitely. So I respect that out of him, but sometimes his music videos are just so wild that like I can't focus on just like the fact that the song is good, you know. So so when I listened to the album, I actually was able to just listen to the songs, and I was pleasantly surprised with a lot of them. So I really liked that about him a lot.
I agree. So one more thing, and then we'll two more things. Next, I don't know, you're not on Twitter too much, right?
I have a Twitter. I don't tweet a lot, but I use it more for like, you know, news and stuff like that, and kind of like checking in on stuff. So
So I don't know if you saw on Twitter, it was trending in my Twitter. People were comparing Drake and Beyonce to Michael Jackson like a few days this week, and people were like, there was a video of not with Michael Jackson holding the baby, but another video of Michael Jackson just walking out of his hotel room. And like, it was like thousands of people just wanting to see him walk out of his hotel room. Like the impact that Michael Jackson had, I think, was just so beyond anyone currently, like the two biggest artists, arguably Drake and Beyonce. And people were just like comparing them. And one thing that someone said, which I actually didn't think about until they said that, which made me kind of go in actually almost the other direction, was there was no social media back then. There was no at Michael Jackson. So there's no like, you know, interacting that way, instead of the only time you might interact or even see Michael Jackson is out of his hotel balcony, or if you go to a concert and then faint when he like makes a move, like what some of those I've seen videos where like he'll just like move his hip or just like his head, and women like faint like at his concert. So I think it's good to look at both sides, but I still think he's on a different level. But not having the social media and the interactions that current artists have and the platforms that they have, I think it's not as wide of a gap as people may think it is or not think it is.
Can you imagine how big Thriller would have been if you could stream it when it came out?
Oh yeah, on billion streams first day.
Seriously, and like, you know, people are still streaming that, you know, like people are still listening to that album, and so like they're still streaming it. So like it probably has great stream like records now, but imagine if there was like a Spotify or Apple Music back when it came out in the 80s. Like, you know, it would be. I don't think Drake or Beyonce would break his records if that were the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I agree.
So yeah, so like, and I personally, like, I don't see the comparison at all between Drake and Michael Jackson other than sales. You know,
yeah, like I think it's the only thing people are even saying.
Yeah, but like Beyonce and Michael Jackson, you can make more of like a good argument between those two. You know, because I think those two like are like the biggest pop sensations of our time, like between the 80s and now. You know, like they're the two biggest. So yeah, I could see that comparison. I could see you can make the argument. I'm still probably going to go Michael Jackson on that one, but but I think that they make a far more better argument than Michael Jackson and Drake, you know?
Definitely. So. Yeah. I was like, this is so random, but I was like, I have to talk about this because I just have to get my opinion. Obviously that's what we're doing here, but I had to get my opinion on it's Michael Jackson. Like, so the last thing I want to mention before we get into our topic, which the topic again is the 5 most influential rappers of all time. I just wanted to quickly talk about, did you see the new Wu-Tang episode? Are you caught up?
I've watched episode 4, so I have to watch the new 2. Yep.
Did you like that episode?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was, like I said, I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really cool just to kind of see how it all kind of plays out. I was expecting a little bit more drama between the whole Ghostface and Raekwon thing, which kind of makes me think that maybe that actually didn't really happen. I think maybe they're just trying to like shed light on how big the beef is between like the two communities. And maybe Raekwon didn't actually like try to kill Ghostface, but like I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. But it just in terms of like what happened in the show, I was kind of expecting more of like a thing instead of just like them looking at each other like all angrily and showing their gun and stuff like that. I was expecting a little bit more. But like I'm just, you know, I just keep getting excited for like what's going to happen next, because we're still not there yet. You know, we're not there to the point where it's like everything that we've learned about Wu-Tang before the show came out, you know? So I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the next 2.
So no, you're only 1 behind.
Oh, really? I thought there was 6 out.
Unless there's a 6 and I missed it, but I caught episode 5 on Wednesday.
Okay.
I don't know, but I'm not going to say too much because you haven't seen it, but what you're saying about them getting to where they are, this episode is kind of like the boat where it's kind of pushing that. It's getting very close. Cool. Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about that, but you'll hear one of their original songs, them creating it, and everything like that. So cool. It's really cool. So I'm excited to talk about that next week and see your reaction to it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited. Like I said, like that show just keeps drawing me in, and I just love watching it. I loved the scene too. I don't know if it was in the 4th episode, maybe it was the 3rd, with Inspector Deck. He's in prison and he's just laying in his bed and he's doing his verse on Cream. I thought that was really cool, just because like Cream is like probably I think it's like number 2 favorite rap songs for me. Like it's so monumental to me. That's
like Stan in the way of people say Cream, like people didn't really say it before that. Like Stan wasn't a real, like people didn't say you're a person, whatever stan before Eminem released that. And similar with Cream, people didn't really say that, but it's still relevant in today's society. People say that.
Yep.
So that's definitely a huge song. Arguably their biggest, if not one of their biggest.
Yeah, it's definitely by far my favorite. And I think Inspector Deck and Raekwon, they both kill it with their verse. And it's one of those verses from Inspector Deck where like I wish like he did more of that. You know, like he's not, when you think of the people from Wu-Tang, like he's not one of the like the main guys other than, you know, like Raekwon and Ghostface and GZA and all them. Method Man, yeah. So like he's kind of one of the more like forgotten people, but that verse is like probably one of Wu-Tang's, like in terms of like the whole group, one of the best verses from Wu-Tang ever. So
it's such a great song. And so we'll talk about that next week when you get to see that, and then we'll be on same page with that. So all right, so now we're going to get into the topic. So I have some criteria that I followed. I don't know what your criteria was. I don't know if you want to talk about that after I talk about mine. But I kind of followed three criteria for what I consider most influential. So the record sales, just being as big as they are, that kind of has to play a factor in it, because people kind of want to mimic or sound similar to you because that's what's selling. Number two is the impact they had on the culture as a whole, not just the music, the fashion, trends, the whatever kind of went around, not just their music, whatever else they influenced as well. And then the impact they had on actually the music. So I kind of separated the culture and the music. Obviously music, that's a huge impact, arguably the biggest, because not only the sales to be like the radio friendly or pop aspect, but also the actual quality or the sounds of the music as well. So that's what I use as criteria for my influential list. What about you? Did you use similar or some other things?
Yeah, so what I think of as influential is kind of along the lines of what you said. I think of somebody who has like really changed the culture of hip hop. So not somebody who's just like good at it, but somebody who's like broke barriers and played around with like different sounds, different flows, stuff like that. They may not be like the best like lyricist, but at least they have like a significant impact on the culture of hip hop. And I kind of agree with you as well. Like, it's not just about like the music, but also kind of like what they're doing with like their platform. Like, they're a high celebrity, right? And like, what are they kind of doing to use like hip hop to kind of change the world? And then, just like multiple talents. Like, I picked a couple of people on my list, I think are people who can do more than just rap, so so I think that's influential in itself. Like, if you can do both things, or if you can produce, you can sing, you can rap, it's very influential to the culture. And then last but not least, I just wrote like legacy and resume. Like, if you have like tons of classic albums under your belt, like obviously you're a very influential person. So so I just kind of went with that, and that's kind of how I guided my thinking towards this. So All
right, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll let you take this one.
All right, so I kind of, as we discussed before we started, I kind of didn't have them in any particular order. I do clearly have a 1 and a 2, but 3, 4, 5 are kind of out of order. So I'm going to start with, I guess for my 5th one, I would say, and you definitely don't have this person, and you're going to be very surprised when I say this person, but Lil Kim.
Wow.
So yeah, right. I know. So I came up with her this morning. I had 4 since middle of the week. I had my 4, and I was like, who's number 5? I was like, I need to pick someone kind of different from the other 4, and I was like, why shouldn't I pick a woman? I was like, because that's a whole, sad to say, but in hip hop, it's like a subgenre. It's like women hip hop is just like, it's not, there's obviously the big artists, but it's so niche almost in a way where like that there's a certain type of, a woman, she's a woman rapper, not just a rapper. So I have a few reasons why I said Lil Kim. So for me, when she came out, she kind of changed the whole trajectory for women in hip hop. Because before her, women were trying to prove they're good enough to rap alongside men. They were trying to, really be, toe to toe with men like Queen Latifah, MC Lyte, Lauryn Hill, Da Brat. They were trying to be like, what, I'm just as good as you. I can out rap you or rap you, bar for bar. and were just as good. But she brought out like the raunchy and racy lyrics that had never really been seen in women before her. The very pro-sexual, lyrics, the very, risque, you could even say, especially at that time in the late, mid late 90s. She was very, with her debut album Hardcore, that was something that really was never seen by a woman before in hip hop. Kind of, men have always kind of been sexual in hip hop, and she was basically like going back at them being just as sexual. And it was kind of, people were like, whoa, what's going on here? Because they were used to the men saying it and not really women as much. So with her, and Hardcore, she kind of changed the trajectory. And then she, shaped the way for almost, I'm not saying all female artists, but all commercial female artists kind of went from there with, and I would say besides really commercial wise, besides Missy Elliott, who also was sex positive and stuff like that, but that wasn't her main selling point. Her and Timberland were just being different. They were their own lane in terms of production and sounds and stuff like that. Besides her, I would say, Trina was someone who was big in the mid 2000s, kind of in between Lil Kim and the next woman I'm going to say, kind of in being, the baddest bitch on the planet, Trina. She kind of was also like that. Then Nicki Minaj, I feel like is an elevated version of Lil Kim in the way of, obviously, I think Nicki Minaj is, besides Lauryn Hill, is probably number 2 to me in terms of women. So she's obviously very sex positive and very comfortable and promoting not just her lyrics, but her body and that type of rapping like Lil Kim. Then Cardi B, similar. Cardi B's, to the top, I would say, of just being very, as whatever the hell she wants to say, which, hey, I'm cool for whatever. If men can say it, women could say it too. So that's fine with me. And then Megan Thee Stallion currently, and City Girls are kind of popular now, but they're all of the 4 I just said are very, and very sex positive and very comfortable with talking about that stuff when like traditionally they weren't. So I think, Lil Kim is so influential in that way. And then also one last thing with her is the fashion. She had the VMAs like in the 90s where she had hand paint on her boobs, showing off her body, the wigs, all the colorful wigs. Now you'll see, Nicki Minaj, Megan Thee Stallion, the City Girls, they all wear different crazy color wigs, especially Nicki Minaj everything was a different wig at that time. And then the eccentric outfits, the over, really, like I said, showing off your body or just being extra kind of with your outfits. So I think for number 5 coming in with me was Lil Kim, just because of what she did for, I'm not saying she's the best female rapper. I don't even think I've named a bunch, and I would say she's not even top 4 or 5. I would give, like I said, number 1 and 2 are to me, Lauryn Hill and Nicki Minaj, but just what she meant to women in hip hop and how she kind of changed it from like trying to compete with men. And I'm not saying that they can't compete with men, because, I think Lauryn Hill is one of the top hip hop artists ever, but like kind of being like, I don't have to compete with you. I'm kind of in my own lane and going to sell records this way instead of trying to outsell men this way. So that's kind of why I chose Lil Kim as my number 5 most influential.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I also have a female artist on my top 5 that I'll talk about obviously later. But when I was thinking about like all the other female artists, like Lil Kim is definitely, she's the quintessential like female rapper. She may not have been the first, she may not have been the best, but she created a culture for women in hip hop. And I think you're absolutely right. Like a lot of the female rappers that you mentioned and a lot of the female rappers that are big now, they got their start and kind of like they got their push from Lil Kim and what she did. So so I think that's a great pick.
Thank you.
Yeah, my number 5 is somebody, I wish I could talk about this person a little bit like after some of the other people on my list, but it's just kind of where he fell to me on like my top 5. But I'm gonna go with Marshall Mathers, Eminem. I think that he's basically, he was the voice of like the early 2000s, with, he had the Slim Shady LP, which, came out in 99, but still kind of like right on the cusp. And then, you have Marshall Mathers LP, which is a classic. Eminem Show, you even got to include like the 8 Mile soundtrack, which came out in 2002. And even like, I know Encore wasn't that great of an album, but I do love the song Like Toy Soldiers. I think that music video was like, that was like when I would stay home from school sick, I would turn on MTV and that music video would come on like 10 times during the day.
Yep.
And so like that was just, I liked that song and I liked the music video. So, those albums don't need any explanation. Like everybody knows like everything about those, the albums, like the Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers LP, Eminem Show, 8 Mile. But for me, like some of the other things that kind of make him one of the top 5 most influential is he's by far the most controversial artist of all time. Like there's really, I mean, I don't want to say there's no debate, because obviously you can make a debate, but just like some of the things that he would say in his songs, it was just like so controversial towards like women, and just like, controversial in terms of like, because back then we didn't really like take like mental health like as seriously as we do now.
Yeah.
And so like if we did, like we would probably say, oh wow, he's like just like really messed up in the head, like, it's okay, whatever. But like back then it was just like, this dude's nuts, like he is so he's crazy, like what is wrong with him? So I think with like some of his content is like, especially the song, Kim, where he's literally just rapping about killing his wife.
Like in detail.
Yeah, like so controversial, and like nothing like anybody else would have done. Like, like again, hip hop, it's not like he was like the most violent person in hip hop when he came out. Like, hip hop had its fair share of like violent stuff and all that before him. But like just some of the stuff, like it was a new type of hip hop really that he created.
And no one was ever what he was saying as big as like other guys, like you were saying, have been violent, talked about crazy stuff, but no one was the number one hip, rapper or even artist in the world saying that shit.
Right. Yeah. And I kind of going into that a little bit more. So like, again, he produced like a different kind of rap, and there's 2 things that like really like solidify that. I think one of them is the Steve Berman skit on Marshall Mathers LP, where he's like, they're rapping about 40s, blunts and bitches, and you're rapping about homosexuals and Vicodin. Like, what is going on? Like, I can't sell this shit, So like, that's just a perfect example of how he created like a new form of hip hop. And the other one. So I watched this show. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, but it's called Hip Hop Evolution.
I love that show. I've seen every episode.
Okay, cool. So you obviously saw the one then where they talk about not Lil Wayne, Eminem.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the funniest parts of that whole like skit, or not skit, but like that segment of that episode was when they interviewed Busta Rhymes, and Busta Rhymes says the same thing. Like everybody's rapping about this stuff, and then you got this white kid from Detroit who's talking about like tying his dick to a tree and jumping off. Like it's like what are you talking about? Like it's so controversial and so weird, but that's just who he was, and nobody else was like that before, So I feel like in terms of that, like that's why I say like he's the most controversial artist of all time, and I think not just most controversial rapper, but just controversial, like one of the most controversial artists of all time. A couple other things that I just want to say briefly, like, I think also him being light skinned matters a little bit. I think that, like in a predominantly, like hip hop it's predominantly Black African American. So I feel like, having like somebody who's white, be a really good rapper, and a lot of people will make the argument that he's the best rapper of all time. And I think that that's really, that says a lot, So I think that that's important too. Even though like it shouldn't be probably, but I think that it is. And also just like, the things that he did with like D12, kind of like his work, and kind of like almost like a good relationship, but a competitive relationship with 50 Cent at that time, I think was also like super, super influential to hip hop. And just, asserting himself as a great feature artist. So like, there's times where like you'll see, Eminem's on this track, like I gotta listen to it, and he may not be the best like featured artist, like he may not have the best features, but if there's a song with Eminem on it, particularly, when he was big, like you're gonna listen to it. So I just feel like with all that, plus, his ability to make the 8 Mile film, I think that was, genius in itself too, which was a really good movie. So I think all of those things just kind of solidify him as being a top 5 influential artist in hip hop. So.
Yeah, I didn't even, he's not on my list. He's one of my favorites, but honestly, everything you said makes a good point. And also especially a good point. We're talking about 50 Cent. 50 Cent, he signed him, and 50 Cent, I've said this on on the original podcast in an episode with my brother, that I've never seen such a quick a rise as 50 Cent, and I don't think we might ever will. Like, obviously he's not the biggest, there's guys that are bigger, but that like 2002 to 2005, 2003 to 2005, like he was insane. Like he was everywhere, and he was just every song was a hit after hit after hit, and he was like Fetty Wap, like on steroids.
Yeah.
And for a few years, not just one summer, but but like that, it was just everything was 50 Cent. He was everywhere. He was so big. His first album went diamond. Like, who does that? Like, not many artists. Well, not many artists go diamond in general, but to first album go diamond, like, is wild.
Yeah. Yep.
So I have to agree on Eminem on just the bringing up 50 Cent, just signing him and introducing him to the world. I think was huge alone.
Yeah. Right.
So my number 4 artist, you probably have him, but I'll let you talk about him. Tupac. I think Tupac is definitely up there. So I'll have to give a little quote or a little lyric, as Mr. J. Cole once said on "Let Nas Down." Pac was like Jesus. Nas wrote the Bible. So Tupac still I think to this day, and it's like mythical almost. He's like a Jesus individual, and he's like the guy, like in hip hop. Like I don't think he's not in my top 5. But he's just he represents just more than the actual music. He's just, I think globally he's so big, and he's such a big figure, and his lyrics and quotes are still used almost as much today as they always have been. Tupac's just, I think, like, he's an artist who uses him a lot or references him a lot is Meek Mill. Meek Mill has a lot of songs that are similar titles or similar lyrics or hooks. Meek Mill uses them a lot, but he's still such an influential rapper or artist overall, still to this day, and people still see him as, a lot of people consider him the GOAT, and still see him as that, huge figure that what he meant to not only West Coast but also hip hop as a whole. So I think personally he's the biggest influence ever to come out of the West. I would say him, and then Snoop is number 2, and I think, like I said, Tupac, I would say, is number 1 because he has like this mythical feeling about him. But I think it's also partially because he's passed. He's not around anymore. And I think in any genre, that adds an extra layer to their legacy, and which is terrible to say, but it does add that when they pass, like a Jimi Hendrix or a, Biggie or Tupac, like they're really added another, or Marvin Gaye even, like it adds an extra, layer to their legacy almost. So I think that's why Tupac is definitely number 1, but Snoop Dogg is honestly a close 2, I think. But also I think he's still the king of the West Coast, but that might change in the next few years or decade or so. I think Kendrick might overtake that with his next album or 2 albums, whatever he plans on doing. But I think just the influence Kendrick is gonna, I think more in a decade from now, when people realize how important Kendrick was and what his albums really said and what they mean, I think it'll eventually overtake Tupac, but that's another conversation too. Also hits, Tupac has so many hits. He has 2 diamond albums, which I don't know how many artists have diamond albums, but to have 2 is wild. 6 multi-platinum albums and 7 just platinum albums. Nothing crazy. The craziest thing is that he only had 4 albums prior to his death. So he has 2 diamond, 6 multi-platinum, which he only has 4, and not all of them are multi-platinum, the ones that he released. So he has 4 multi-platinum, or 6 multi-platinum after he passed. 6 multi-platinum total, sorry. And 4 of his multi-platinums were released after he passed. I don't think any other artist, even Drake, Kanye, or Jay-Z, could even do that, to have one of the albums is a diamond album. It's his greatest hits, which I still, you have to consider it, because to sell 10 million of a greatest hits is still a lot of albums. So I just think he has those, like, he has 11 albums total, and 7 were after his death, and he has all of these record sales or album sales after that. I think stands a testament to how influential and how big he is, or is and was, for him to have all these albums I can't say the word posthumous.
Oh, posthumous.
Posthumous. I always say I
Posthumous.
don't know, whatever. Posthumous. To have all of these records after you die, to go multi-platinum after you die, is to me is insane. You don't see like artists, there's a lot like Juice WRLD, they're doing a lot, Pop Smoke, they're doing a lot, but you'll never see these guys go, obviously they're not even before death Tupac level, but you'll never see big artists even after they pass to go platinum on a posthumous album more than once, but let alone multi-platinum more than once. So I think that's a testament. And also he's the first rapper besides Will Smith, because you could say Will Smith is a rapper because Summertime, besides him, that is seen as a legit actor before, like now a lot of rappers are turning to actors and stuff, but with, he was in some big movies like Juice. That's one of my favorite movies, not one of my favorites, but it's definitely a really good movie. Poetic Justice, Above the Rim, and Gridlock. These are some 4 movies that, really were legit solid movies, not just, it's a movie about him, or he's just like, oh, he's we'll just throw him in this film, make it look good. I would say him, and also Ice Cube. Ice Cube is also kind of taken seriously as well, but I would say Tupac is also really seen as a legit actor, because that's what he was. Also, he went to acting school and stuff. I think I watched a documentary or something on it where that was actually his first love. So being able to do that and be respected and seen as a legit actor was also very rare at that time. And then a little with the fashion, not as much as some of these other people, but the bandana is tied in the front. I think everyone still thinks of that as Tupac. When you see someone with a bandana tied in the front, that just screams Tupac. And also the nose rings weren't, I feel like, seen as cool. And you'll see, a rapper with a nose ring, and it kind of goes back to Tupac. And Jay-Z, on 444 talks about, making fun of, older rappers making fun of new rappers, but then he says, Tupac had a nose ring too. So, you're critiquing certain fashions or whatever of new guys, but Tupac was doing something that might have seemed a little weird at the time, but it was Tupac. So he did it and he got away with it. Yeah. So that's really what I wrote for Tupac. I think he's just so influential overall, and kind of this mythical creature in a way, or mythical figure, not creature, figure, in hip hop of almost like this otherworldly, like he's with the quotes and the lyrics just still to this day remain true. So that's my number 4.
Yeah, I totally agree with a lot of things that you said. I think that when you think of somebody who is like viewed as being like kind of like what you said, like a Jesus figure of hip hop, it's him. And I think of 2 examples of people who just kind of like, I feel like they try to kind of carry on his legacy and kind of carry on his message and kind of what he was trying to do. Obviously one of them was Kendrick. I think Kendrick kind of more, tries to be like him as a rapper. But in terms of like as a person and like what you're going to do with like your platform in hip hop, I think of like the late great Nipsey Hussle, and just like, like how he, tried to use his hip hop, kind of like stardom to make his community better. So I feel like Tupac is like that. He's a really good rapper, and he does a lot for the culture of like rap as a rapper, but he also like, tried to make the world a better place with his platform. So that's just kind of what I think. People look up to him not just as a rapper, as a lyricist, but also as like a person and a celebrity. So definitely. So yeah, so I totally agree. My number 4 is Lauryn Hill, and I think that she is the best female rapper of all time. I agree. I would say that, she's, in terms of like as a lyricist, her flow and just like her wordplay and stuff like that it's just top notch. And I just wish that she had more. I wish she had more albums, like I wish there was more than just the one solo album and the one album with the Fugees. So I wish there was more of that, but I think she's the best female rapper of all time. I was actually talking to my significant other, Bree, who wanted me to shout her out in this episode, so I'm doing it now. Hi, Bree. But I was talking to her the other day because we were actually listening to Lauryn Hill for a little bit, and to me, I think that Lauryn Hill does this one thing in particularly the best, and maybe she was kind of like the first person to really do it, but to me, she's like one of the first artists to like showcase talents in singing and rapping. Like, she is a great rapper. She has great flows, great bars and stuff like that, but she's also a phenomenal singer. Like, you know, there's lots of rappers that, you know, sing, like, you know, Drake, and to name it, you know, Kanye sings sometimes and stuff like that. But nobody says like, oh my God, Drake and Kanye are phenomenal singers. Like, they can sing like so good, you know? And I think Lauryn Hill is like one of those people who you can say is a really great rapper, but can also sing really well too.
Yeah.
So I would say like I don't know if she's like the first to do that, but in terms of like what I'm thinking and all the music that I've listened to, like if you go like back to like the dates when she released like her albums and stuff like that, you know, there weren't a lot of people before her in hip hop that were singing and rapping at the same time. So I kind of considered that. I also kind of considered the fact that 2 songs off of her solo album are songs that get sampled a lot these days in hip hop, which is Doo Wop, and then X Factor is another one. So I think the fact that those 2 songs have a legacy of like kind of like staying relevant in hip hop is also like a testament to like her legacy, making music that can be used again and kind of, you know, revisited a little bit. So I think that those 2 songs for her, like not only were they great songs just from her standpoint as a rapper, but just also like the fact that those songs are so well received and so liked by so many people that they just keep getting reused. So I kind of talked about that a little bit. Just like her activism, you know, as a female, like you kind of alluded the same thing to like Lil Kim in a way. But she's kind of, Lauryn Hill's kind of more like, you know, like I'm going to stand up for women's rights and stuff like that, you know, whereas Lil Kim kind of pushed the door open for women, you know, but I don't see her like being like kind of like an activist the way Lauryn Hill is, you know? So I think that also plays a role, like, again, just using that platform to kind of, you know, talk about stuff that, you know, needs to be talked about. And then lastly, you know, just for her, like, again, her career with the Fugees, you know, How Many Mics is a great song. Ready or Not, like, you know, I love her opening line where she's talking about like, I played this game like a game of chess, which is, again, something like in the 90s, like a lot of rappers love talking about playing chess, you know, and kind of like, you know, use that analogy of like, oh, life is like a game of chess and, you know, stuff like that. So, and then last but not least, can't go without not saying the cover of Killing Me Softly. Like, some people don't even know that that's a cover. Like, these days, when you hear that song, some people just automatically go, oh, it's Lauryn Hill, but it's not, you know. But I think that her version of that song is more well received than the original. And so again, that's just another, like, that's a groundbreaking classic song by her, and it was even her own song. So I just think like all of those things kind of factor into like why to me she is the best female rapper of all time. And I think you have to have her in a top 5 because of just what she's done for the culture and for like the women in hip hop. So that's kind of why I say her at number 4.
Yeah, I have to agree with her. I think she's also the best female rapper of all time, and Ready or Not is phenomenal, and Doo Wop and Killing Me Softly. That's one of those covers that is just, you know, it's one of those very few times where a cover you're like, this is better. Very often there's covers that you're like, all right, well, the original is better, but there's very rarely is there a cover that's like, all right, well, we'll go with this version now. And that's a prime example of one, because that song's phenomenal.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so I'm gonna go with my number 3. He's you might have him, I don't know, but he's very big in the mid to late 2000s, early 2010s. Weezy F Baby, Lil Wayne. So Lil Wayne's, I think, the basic example of the impact he has on hip hop today. Hip hop would not be the way it is right now without Lil Wayne. With him or Kanye West, those are the 2 biggest influences of today's artists. I said this back in 2016. I tweeted it out, and I don't know how I remember it, but I do. There's only 2 artists currently that aren't two of the big artists that aren't directly influenced by Kanye and Lil Wayne, and that's, I would say, Kendrick and Cole. They have, I would say there's some influence, but not to like the influence of like how with guys like, you know, Drake and you know, with Kanye and Lil Wayne, and like any other big artist is directly influenced by, I would say, Lil Wayne. And most of the sounds and the flows and the style of rap is, I feel like, a directly from Lil Wayne. He's just so influential to today's hip hop that I think to influence a whole, really, at least one or two possible generations, depending on your view of how long a generation is, generation of hip hop. He artists like, Future, Young Thug, and Meek Mill, I think those are directly like from that time, like the late, early 2010s. You could say those guys are, especially Young Thug, and Future even, those are directly from Lil Wayne. Like they sound like him, look like him in certain ways, and I just think and also Meek Mill has really influenced him a lot with his flows and stuff. And then there's newer artists like Lil Baby, Polo G, Moneybagg Yo, NBA Youngboy, 42 Doug. These are guys that are just so directly influenced, and these are just some of the bigger artists. But I feel like artist is just influenced by an artist, either by Lil Wayne or an artist that's influenced by Lil Wayne. And I think that's such a big testament to how big he was, and how big he was at a certain time when a lot of these artists were coming up or growing up, that they want to sound like him. So I think also the randomness of his bars, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but he's just so great at just anything. Like he's not the best at telling a story. Like I would never really want Lil Wayne to tell a story in his song, but just how he can rhyme with the most random crap. You're like, what is he talking? Almost like Eminem in a way, but like not as vulgar, but just more like,
right.
Wow. Like I would have never even thought of that, or I never would have said that. So going off of that, he's sales wise, he's the 5th biggest rapper of all time, selling over 20 million albums and over 120 million units sold, including singles and stuff like that. So he's huge. He's he's top 5 biggest rappers of all time, just off of sales. The fashion and impact he's had on the culture. Truck fit was big for a little while. His brand, the skinny jeans, he was every person was wearing skinny jeans when Lil Wayne was getting big. Dreads, not every rapper, but a lot of rappers now have dreads. And before Lil Wayne, obviously dreads are part of, culture, but every rapper I feel like since has had dreads, or most rappers have had dreads since then. The tattoos, head to toe and tattoos, that's also a thing. Lil Wayne, I feel like, started with like a bunch of these rappers I've said, besides Lil Baby, he doesn't have any tattoos, but the rest of these guys are tattooed almost from head to toe. And that wasn't as popular or relevant before Lil Wayne came around, and he's probably doesn't have a square inch on his body without a tattoo. So that's something. And also something that was around before him, but he elevated it, was also lean, like the lean culture. It was around Houston. Rap really introduced that with, DJ Screw and UGK, but like it really elevated with Lil Wayne, because rappers from it was a Houston thing. But now after Lil Wayne really reintroduced that and brought it nationwide, which is kind of a sad thing to say about, but he really, lean's big in California, New York, Atlanta. It's big everywhere now. So that's, I think, because of him, he brought that out. This is a question, but I think it's just a question out there. Greatest mixtape rapper possibly ever. If not, all right. Yeah, I agree as well. I think he's his mixtapes. Yeah, no one I think could touch him on the mixtapes. His albums, that's a different story. I don't think he's only had a few really good albums, but his mixtapes are just unreal. And that kind of goes along with me saying, I say he's the best random rapper of all time, because that kind of goes along with it. Mixtapes are meant for you to just rap your ass off, really, not to, for, certain stories or certain views or something like that. Like if you want to tell on an album certain stories or certain things like that you want to tell. But if you're going with mixtapes, especially, he's rapping on other people's beats and making better versions of them, kind of like what we said with Lauryn Hill and and covers with her song. But Lil Wayne basically did covers and just killed rappers on their own songs. So that's alone, it was like mixtape Wheezy is just, it's a different level of rapping with him. And then the influence he had with Young Money was huge, and bringing on Drake, who's the second highest selling rapper of all time and the biggest artist right now. Nicki Minaj, who's the highest female selling rapper of all time, and the influence she's had on hip hop. Tyga, even though he's not that influential, but he's had hits. You can't deny he's had platinum singles. He sold a lot of singles. And then last but not least, Chanel West Coast. She signed Young Money. She's she's a huge, a huge signing, Young Money, man. So Young Money, now, and Cash Money, he was signed to them, but that was also big. But his label, Cash Money, I'm sorry, Young Money, is just huge. With those three artists alone, really number one and two. But Young Money has been a big label, and every tag you've heard on every song of his for the last decade was YM, Young Moolah, whatever, Young Money. So that was also big with Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
And then I have two more things. From 2007 to about 2013, if you wanted a hit, kind of like with Drake now, you asked Lil Wayne for a feature. You wanted a feature, whether it's a chorus or a verse, Lil Wayne would deliver and kill it. He would rarely miss, and he elevated not only the song itself, but also the sales. Like this, not only like you could, say you got a Lil Wayne feature and it was going to sell, but he made the song better too. It wasn't just, oh, let me listen to it because Drake's on it or Lil Wayne's on it or whoever's on it. But you're like, damn, he killed that feature. Damn, that chorus was good. Lil Wayne did that. And from like 2007 to 2013, those say 7 years, you wanted a feature, you were getting Lil Wayne. You wanted a really good feature, or you wanted to boost your sales, you were getting Lil Wayne on that song. And not just hip hop, in any genre, really. Pop, anything, you were asking Lil Wayne for that. So that shows how big he was. And also experimentation with different sounds, revival, kind of tried that with was it Revival or Rebirth? Sorry, Rebirth,
yeah.
With the Roc, which that's not one of my biggest, that's not one of his best albums to me, no. But he tried it, and you have to give him kudos to trying it, when especially he was at the peak of how big he was, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a rock album, and I'm the biggest rapper right now. And also his updating his sound, because that's a lot of rappers struggle with that too. And he was struggling at one point with that, but updating his sound where he can rap on current beats and keep up with current rappers. Obviously not to the extent he was, but he can still rap with, certain newer rappers to a certain extent. And also like kind of similar to what he did he had the Carter 5 stashed away. He was ready to go for years. And then he had to redo it essentially with, years later to release it, to make it sound kind of relevant or current. Because if you released that version, it just wouldn't have done well, because from when he was going to release Carter 5 to when he did release it, hip hop really changed, and trap was like getting big, or he was kind of on that trap wave for a little, but it just excelled after he kind of just went down and other rappers emerged, because like Future and Young Thug, they really took the sound and went not totally different direction, but it's not what it was when he was at the height of his career. So that's really what I had to say with Lil Wayne. And I had a lot of reasons, and that's why I think Lil Wayne is top 3 most influential of all time.
Yeah, unfortunately he didn't make my list, but he is like right there on my like honorable mentions, is because I go back to the mixtape, and just kind of like, not only is he the greatest mixtape rapper of all time, but like mixtapes weren't really a thing until Lil Wayne did them. I mean they were, but like they weren't as 50 popular.
Cent, 50 Cent like basically made mixtapes, and then they were cool. They were cool for like local artists and like to get to up and coming artists. But Lil Wayne was like, he made, like he already had his album, so he was already popular. Then he just created, a whole different, sound, whole different, lane even, or he just elevated himself even farther.
Yeah, so he definitely, I feel like he made them like popular, like, what they are now, and what they were kind of like, a few years ago. I feel like he's the greatest mixtape rapper of all time, but he also just kind of like made them popular, so I think that there's that. And I also think like going back to, so like, again, like part of it for me is, what do you do for your like community? Like, how do you use that? And I think when Katrina hit New Orleans, like he took that platform, and that was right around his peak. So like, that was like a good thing that he did, was just kind of use his platform to kind of help the city that he came from and stuff like that. I think that was really cool. And then the other thing that I like about him too is how he brings like a culture of like skater boy almost in a way to hip hop. Like how many rappers do you know that like will get on a skateboard and like do like kick flips and shit? Like, like not a lot. You might think like Lupe Fiasco is another one who had that kick push song. But other than that, like he brings like a different type of culture to hip hop, which is, I respect that out of him. So when I was making my list, I wanted to put him in, but I just feel like my other ones kind of like pushed him out a little bit. but yeah, definitely for sure, like very influential to the community of hip hop. So that, yeah, it's a good pick. I like it.
Thank you.
My number three, I'm going to go ahead with somebody who is kind of like current. And, you know, obviously, like, we don't know how this person's kind of legacy is going to pan out, but as of right now, like, it's pretty solid. And that's Kendrick.
Okay.
I think that he is already like a very influential person on the rap community, just because, you know, because he's current. You know, like, I feel like there's got to be somebody who, like, right now is doing the same things that the other people that we've talked about have already done, you know, but like doing it in a way that like keeps, like, you know, it's not repetitive, or it's not like, oh, well, we've already seen this before. Like, Kendrick's doing it in a way that's just different. And I think it's worth noting, like, the first point is that, to me, he has 3 classic albums already under his belt.
I agree.
And I think most people will agree on 2 of them. Like, I think Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly obviously are classics.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there you go, right there. And I think that most other people will say that Damn is also a classic. I think Damn is a good album, but I think that Section 80 is another classic for him. Because, like, I just love, like, you know, that was kind of like his introduction. Like, he had a mixtape before that album, but like that album was kind of like the introduction to like who Kendrick is. And I feel like that album, like, really, like, he talks a lot in interviews about how Damn is like all of his music like put together into one album. But I feel like Section 80 is kind of like, this is who I am, and this is kind of like where I'm going with this rap thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that kind of like set him up. And while that sometimes, like, for most artists, like, that's like, you're not going to have a classic like right away when you do that. But like, I feel like everything that he talks about in that album, as well as Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly, are just like, it's so iconic what he did. And so I just feel like, you know, 3 classics already under your belt, like, how can you not already be like a top 10 at least? For me, top 5, but like top 10 definitely. So I think about that. I kind of go back to what you said about Tupac and just kind of following his legacy and message. Like, Kendrick is the quintessential like Tupac protege almost. You know, like,
I would say that
he is like Tupac reincarnated, basically. So I feel like that has something to say about it. I think that right now he's the voice of this generation in terms of hip hop, even though he doesn't come out with a lot of music like some of the other guys do. I still think, like, when he does, like, that, it's like everybody's mind is just blown. Everybody's like paying attention. Everybody's like thinking about what he's saying. So he leaves a mark on, you know, the people that are listening to hip hop today. So I think that that's a big part of it. Another part that I love about him is his ability to kind of create concept focused albums. So like Good Kid, Mad City was like basically a movie. And, you know, To Pimp a Butterfly, while it may not seem like a movie like Good Kid, Mad City, it's still very conceptual, and has like a lot of like all the songs kind of like tie together. And I think, like, there's been a lot of like albums that are like that in like rock music and pop music, they do it. But hip hop, it's really hard. It's really hard to make a concept album because hip hop is so lyrical, and it's hard to like stay focused on one topic for 15 tracks when you're rapping your ass off for 3 verses a track, you know? And so I feel like his ability to be able to do that is just, it's what makes him a legend. I think in terms of, you know, telling stories, like, he's definitely like a top 3 storyteller in hip hop. He might even be one of the greatest storytellers of all time in music. Because again, just being able to stay focused on a story for a whole album's worth is just something that, you know, not a lot of people can do. And I think a lot of people are trying to do that, or at least, you know, some rappers are just trying to like make like a good like song that tells a story. Like, I don't know, did you hear the new song by 5EO Foreign? That's how you say it, 5EO Foreign. He has a new song out, I think it's called True Stories or something like that.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a good song, and it's just a story. It's a story about a kid, you know, being incarcerated and going to jail for, you know, maybe something that they didn't do, or something that he shouldn't be in jail for that long. But it's just like things like that, like those are all like Kendrick influences people to use rap to tell stories. And I think that, you know, again, before Kendrick, of course it had been done before, but he really like takes it to the next level in terms of like telling a story. I would say he's like a number 2 storyteller of all time. I'm not going to say who number 1 is because he's on my list, and we haven't gotten there yet. But I would just say like he's a great storyteller. And the last thing I want to say about him too is that to me, he keeps like the West Coast style, and adds like his own flair to it. So like before, like the 90s, you would always be able to tell like, oh, this is Snoop and he's got a West Coast sound. Oh, this is Biggie and he has a New York sound, right? You were always able to kind of tell the difference. These days, like you can't really tell where somebody's from, but you can definitely tell where he's from, because again, he just has like that, you know, his beats and his instrumentation are very like 90s West Coast. And you know, just the way he raps and just kind of like the things that he talks about. Obviously, you know, he mentions Compton in like almost every song, but you know, he just has like that old West Coast style. And the only other person in hip hop that I know that like has like a true like sound to like where they're from is Joey Badass. Joey Badass is a really good like New York sounding rapper, you know? And so I think Kendrick like is able to just kind of like take like that West Coast sound that's been around for so long, but again, he adds his own flair and kind of his own thing to it. So I like that about him a lot. And then last but not least, I feel like there's so much that you know about him just from his music, but there's also like so much that we still like don't know. And maybe we never know.
We don't know Kendrick, but we really know Kendrick.
Like you don't, right? Like you don't know Kendrick personally, like as much as you would like a Drake or even like a Kanye. But like, so like we don't know him like that, but like you know, like kind of like some of his morals and kind of some of his influences and kind of some of the things that he's been through before he became a rapper, you know? So like I feel like he's told so many stories, but there's something in me that feels like there's still more to tell. And that just kind of keeps me interested, but it's also a really hard thing to do, right? Like it's hard to like continue to tell things that are interesting, and he just always delivers. He always delivers with like, you know, flair, and he delivers with like keeping us interested and entertained. So I think when it's all said and done, like he is a top 5 like most influential rapper in hip hop.
Definitely. There's 2 things I wanted to say with that. One, when you're talking about like it's like a movie, Good Kid, Mad City, I actually say with his 3, not Section 80, but with Good Kid, Mad City, Damn, and To Pimp a Butterfly. So to me, Good Kid, Mad City is like a movie. To Pimp a Butterfly is like a play, and Damn's like an actual, it's an album. Yeah. So I think the way that like I could see To Pimp a Butterfly being on like a Broadway, being a play. I think the way it plays out, the way, you know, the way he uses everything, the jazz, and then Good Kid, Mad City, I think would be a great movie if they ever adapted it. And then Damn is just straight, like it's meant to be an album, where the other 2, like you can see them being something else, where Damn is, I love Damn. I think it's also a classic, but as the other 2, but I just think that it's just such a perfect, like it wouldn't work as the other 2 would in other ways, but it's such a good, it's meant to be an album. It's not meant for you to like, it's meant for you to just like hone in on it, not like visualize, where he's great at the other 2 albums at making you see where he is or what he's doing. So I think that, and then also going back to your list, which I know you didn't say it, but I know who is on your list. So I thought we might have the same final 2, but we don't, because that person who I know is on your list is not on mine. So for my number 2, I don't know if this is the person I don't think is on your list, is Jay-Z. Jay-Z is, to me, 1B is just behind my next person, but it's just, he's the blueprint for Drake, essentially, in terms of just the stardom. And also his actual rapping style. I think he raps a lot like Jay-Z. I think Jay-Z, at least rapping, might be his biggest influence. The production and stuff like that, I think but actual like flows and everything, I think Jay-Z's like Drake's biggest influence. But we're not talking about Drake. So Jay-Z, his record sales, his 13 platinum solo albums, and every album went number 1. Like,
what can you say? Yeah,
like that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
he has over 36 million albums sold and over 125 million units sold. He's the 4th highest selling rapper of all time. He was number 2 for a very long time. Eminem's number 1, Drake is number 2, Kanye's 3rd, and then he's 4th. So he's top 4 selling, but I think overall sales, but to have 13 platinum solo albums and each one of them go number 1, I just think is insane. You don't see that. He's had multiple classic albums. To me, I think Reasonable Doubt, Volume 2, Hard Knock Life, The Blueprint, the Black Album, and 444. 444 to me, surprisingly, is my favorite album of his. Wow. He's very mature on that, and it's from a totally. Jay-Z was never too vulnerable on his albums, and this was the first time where I felt his vulnerability. So that's why I love it. He's also, like the other ones I said, are classics and they're great, but I just liked his vulnerability because that's something that it didn't make it better, but it's just something you never saw from him, which was cool because you never saw Jay-Z really be that vulnerable on an album from like start to finish too. His business acumen and his promoting wealth, he's so like his art, he's big into art now and owning your own music, and kind of with Tidal, what he was trying to do for artists and telling artists, like even on 444, like you're still signing with labels and not promoting yourself, which I understand why people sign, because it's very hard to start on your own and go independent. But I understand what he was also trying to push and say, that, own your own stuff, not, end up in a situation like Prince or Michael Jackson, where, you're fighting over that, like own your own stuff and get all the money you should on your own. You're creating it. You should get, your portion of it. Having your own label, like starting, your own either music label, or even he has, with Duce and Roc Nation and Roc Nation Sports or Rockefeller, like he, starting your own thing, owning property too. He talks about, like in Dumbo on 444, like I could have bought Dumbo at like, a certain, and now it's worth like quadruple or whatever it is now, or even art. He talks about buying art at 2 million and a few years later it's 4, and then another years later it's worth 8. So that, and then owning companies too, and also just what he talks about for the Black culture and promoting Black wealth and Black ownership, I think is just something that is great to see, and something where he's kind of also in his lyrics kind of giving the blueprint to that, as well as making the moves and kind of just showing people the way on how to do that. So I think that's also great. Jay-Z, I have a lot to talk about. So putting on a lot of artists, he's put on countless artists, and I'm just going to go off. Memphis Bleak with Rockefeller, Beanie Siegel with Rockefeller, Freeway, there was a role with Rockefeller, Foxy Brown, Just Blaze with the production. He was big on that. Dipset as a whole, he had all of them, and they kind of went and did their own thing, but they started with him. Uncle Murda, who's big in New York. Kanye, how can you not mention Kanye? Rihanna, how can you also not mention her? J. Cole, Jay Electronica. So these are huge artists throughout the years that he's put on. And then two of his own artists ended up becoming billionaires on their own with Kanye and Rihanna. So he's a billionaire, but he also helped. Obviously, they did their own business ventures and their own stuff. But without his push in the music, they wouldn't have had that platform to become billionaires on their own. So that's crazy alone to think of yourself as a billionaire, but kind of promoting and creating in your own sense of, if you didn't put them on, they wouldn't have been to be able to be as successful as they were with the music, and then in turn turn that into their own wealth with their own businesses and ventures and stuff like that. So I think that's crazy to say that one person who's a billionaire created their own billionaire, created their own worth in becoming a billionaire, created two others essentially in the process. Rockefeller, the label, and Rockaware, the clothing brand. The label was pretty much kind of what I talked about with all of those artists besides J. Cole and Jay Electronica. They all were signed to him, and they were successful, at least for some point in time. They never flopped, but all of them had at least, a few hot songs or maybe a hot album that was well at the time. And then Rockaware clothing line, at their peak, which I found this out looking more into it, they were making 700 million annually, which is huge. And he sold the rights to Rockaware in 2007. Rockaware, kind of like Echo or what was the other brand, Fat Farm and stuff like that. Those were big clothing brands in the mid 2000s. And it was Jay-Z. I actually read up on it. He saw a lot of people wearing the same, not his brand, but a brand that was popular, wearing the same jeans as his, because he made them popular. And he thought, why don't I just sell my own stuff and that'll be popular, and I'll get, instead of they're getting the money off of me making stuff popular, I'll make stuff popular and make money off of it myself, which kind of goes into the back to the business acumen and promoting wealth aspect of him, which is also, it's very smart. Hey, why kind of, and that influenced other, hip hop artists to kind of also have their own brands, like G Unit had their own brand, and other artists even try to make their own brands as well. Then also Roc Nation and Roc Nation Sports. Roc Nation was kind of his second coming with a label, but more of just harvesting talent and not kind of having just his own little label. It started the first artist was J. Cole, as I mentioned, and then who turned out to be a legend in his own right. And then 2010, Jay Electronica, he signed and is now is home to over 45 artists, and manages the business side, 34 artists, which there's a lot of huge artists on there, a few as I mentioned, but he's also manages like a bunch of artists like Lil Uzi Vert, Big Sean, Jay Electronica, Moneybagg Yo. A lot of these rappers are also signed him just for the management part because of how well he's built his own management and the people around him. They want him to manage them as well. And also with Roc Nation Sports, that's also a huge agency as well. He has signed some of the biggest athletes in the world, like Robinson Cano, who was the first client, which at the time he was one of the best baseball players in the league. LaMelo Ball signed to them, Skylar Diggins in the WNBA, Kyrie Irving, Saquon Barkley, Juju Smith-Schuster, Romelu Lukaku is a player on the Chelsea football team, soccer team, you could say. And then Des Bryant, he's not currently playing, but he was a big football player back when he was at his height, and he was signed to Roc Nation. So these are just some of the athletes he's had, and he has a whole bunch of others. These are the standout names, but it's just crazy to see how big of an impact Jay-Z has had on hip hop. I started off with the music and then just went off into everything else. And Jay-Z to me is 1B, and it's very close to 1A, but and person I have at number one just has a bigger influence. So that's me and Jay-Z. And I know I had a lot and I said a lot, but he's done a lot. So I can't leave him out.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. He unfortunately is not on my list. I same with Lil Wayne and him. Like, I wanted to put them in there so badly because I know how big of an influence they are. But yeah, for me, like, he is like the quintessential, like, a great rapper, but also a great businessman. And like, in terms of the whole culture of hip hop, like, he is that guy. He is the guy that, is like, you can say, like, I am a great lyricist, I'm a great rapper, I can make great rap music, but then I can also take like everything that I've done in hip hop and turn it into like a business, and I'm good at that too, by the way. So so it's just kind of crazy, like, all the things that he can do. Like, he's more than just a musician. So for me, it kind of goes beyond hip hop, which is kind of crazy. It's actually kind of funny that you put him at your number two, because my number two is probably his biggest rival at one point. And if you know anything about me, you know that this was coming. So
yeah, I actually thought he might have been number one, but
no, yeah,
he's number two.
I put him at number two. I put Nas at number two. I think that in terms of the lyrics, and this is, this can be debated by tons of people, but it's just where I stand. But I think that he's the greatest rapper of all time. And I think that, he has like I know I've used this term a lot this episode, but like, he has like the quintessential rap album in Illmatic. I think that is like the blueprint of like what rap music is and what it would later become. So I think with that alone, it kind of puts him as like an influential person in hip hop, just because he has like that album under his belt that was just, so iconic to the whole culture. He also, to me personally, like, back, maybe not so much now, but like back then, and it didn't really like happen all that much, but like, I feel like he could battle anybody. He could battle anybody, and he may not necessarily win all the time, but like, he can make it interesting. And I always go back to like the whole like takeover ether thing. And that a lot of people are 50-50 with that. I personally think that Nas won that one, just because I feel like he was just more like upfront and literally just like you knew who he was talking about because he said it. And just like some of the things that he said towards Jay-Z was just like, it was almost like too much.
With that, I used to think kind of like how you're saying, I used to say Take Care was better. And then recently I'm like, I heard Ether recently, like not that recent, but like in the past year. And I was like, holy crap. All right. It kind of registered again. I was like, all right, yeah, this is definitely better.
Yeah, he was so brutal. And like, again, like when you listen to two songs, like again, you knew who Jay-Z was talking about too, but Jay-Z was kind of a little bit more like subliminal about it, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas Nas, literally, like the chorus to the song was "fuck Jay-Z," like that's, you know, like you knew who he was talking about, you know. So like, so I feel like in terms of like that, and that's just like the biggest example of like he could pretty much go toe to toe with anybody, especially when he was in his prime years. Like he could go toe to toe with anybody.
And his most two recent albums are really good. King's Disease 1 and 2. They're both very good
Yeah.
albums.
Yeah, so that's actually going to be like my next point too, is like,
oh, my bad.
you know, no, it's, I'm glad that you said that, because like it's good to know that like other people are noticing it too, because for me, like I've always thought that, you know, he had Illmatic, which was obviously a classic, and then It Was Written is a good, it was good. Like how can you compare your next album to Illmatic? Like, you know, so it was good. And then he had some years where like some of his music was just terrible. And so, and a lot of that you could say the same thing about Eminem, who's also on my list. You know, like, you know, they don't have like both of them don't have like the most like consistent careers. But then like towards the end, like kind of like approaching to where we are now, like he's had some of his best albums. Like one of my favorite albums by him is the Untitled one, which came out like in 2010, I think it was, or somewhere around that time. And from there, like, you know, you have that album, then you have Life Is Good, which was a pretty good one. Then you had Nasir, which I personally liked. I don't understand why people don't care for that one as much, but
I like it too.
I like that album a lot, and I think he's got some of his best songs on it, like Adam and Eve. I think is a great song off of that album. And then King's Disease 1 and 2, both are really great. I was actually surprised that King's Disease 2 was as good as it was.
Me
Because
too.
I thought it was just gonna be a bunch of leftovers and B-sides. You know, so he has like those albums on the back end of his career. He also has like two really good ones in the middle with Godson and Stillmatic. So even those like albums are good. So like, has he had the most like consistently good career? No, but he's like been able to like stay relevant. You know, like he's still like, his album this year, King's Disease 2, I would put ahead of some of the other rap albums that, you know, are from artists who are just starting to come out or who are at their peak right now. You know, so like his ability to kind of stay consistent is critical to me. And also the last thing I want to say too is just like how he's kind of changed his rapping like style a little bit. Not in necessarily like how he raps or his flow, but like what he raps about. Like in the beginning of his career, he was always rapping about, you know, like living in New York, you know, kind of like the lifestyle that he's lived there. But then now he's kind of taking more like political approaches. Like again, Untitled is all about, you know, like, you know, America and just surviving in America. And, you know, he even has like a song on there, I think it's called like Sly Fox, which is literally all about Fox News. So like he's kind of like been able to rap about like street culture, but then as he's grown older and matured and kind of become more of a matured artist, he's been able to kind of venture off into other directions. So I feel like when you have that versatility, that also makes you a big influence on hip hop. And so yeah, I would say that he's the greatest rapper of all time. I would put him second influentially just because like he doesn't do the things like, you know, Jay-Z does. I mean, he does those things, but he doesn't do them at the level that Jay-Z does it. Or even like, you know, a Kendrick, you know, just kind of like, you know, doing other things with your platform. Like he's kind of just like a rapper and that's pretty much it, you know? So, so I would put him at 2, and that's kind of my reasons for that. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. Nas is one of the best, to me, one of the best rappers of all time, one of the best pure, you know, he can go toe to toe with anyone. And I have to agree with everything he said. He's off my list, but he's definitely in my top 10 of influential, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, last but not least, I think you know where I'm going with this. I think you know who I'm picking. My most influential rapper of all time is Kanye West. I think I have a million reasons, so I'm just gonna go into it. The impact he had on just the music alone, the production with the sampling. Sampling has always been in hip hop, obviously, but it kind of was fading, and then he really brought it back, and he just was using so much soul samples and really making them into totally different songs, which I think was great. And just his production, he's considered one of the greatest producers of all time, not even just a rapper, just a producer also. we talked about this briefly last week, the influence from 808s, how it kind of changed the trajectory or the direction of hip hop at the time. And it kind of influenced a whole new generation of people that can sing and rap or just be comfortable showing their emotions on songs. So there's that. He killed gangster rap for a moment of time with, because 50 Cent was at the height right at that time. And then Kanye West came out and 50 Cent was talking about, selling drugs and killing people. And Kanye West was talking about working at, the Gap and buying pink polos and Louis Vuitton. So it was just different. And he just kind of killed gangster rap. People say it in 2007 when Graduation and 50 Cent, I think Curtis was coming out, and they had a beef, or not a beef, but a little competition of who would sell more. And they said the loser would retire, which it was 50 Cent, and he still hasn't retired. So I don't know what's happening there, but it was basically saying, all right, well, this is what people want to listen to now, not as much as that. So I think that almost every album has a different era. People say it's, what era Kanye is in, whether it's the, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or Yeezus or 808s or Life of Pablo or Graduation. He just has different eras, which you don't always see with hip hop. You see with usually other genres of an era, but he's one that everything's an era with him, which is kind of, I guess, legendary in a way, you could say. Multiple classic albums, as kind of talked with Jay-Z. I think his first 6 albums to me are classic, which you don't ever see an artist like that. I think College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation, My Beautiful Dark 808s, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and Yeezus to me are all classics. That's just me. And then we were talking about yesterday, he also has like Life of Pablo is also very good. Donda to me is very good. Yay to me is good, not very good, but and then obviously I'd Watch the Throne and Kids See Ghosts in there, which to me are also great albums. So he has so many classic albums. The influence also kind of said with 808s, but Yeezus also kind of made changed it a little, not as much as 808s, but kind of very abrasive and very dark with his sounds, which influenced the guy I would say he also influenced the album, but sounds like Travis Scott and more like dark melody stuff, which I think was big on Yeezus, and that kind of influenced rappers after that. Kind of what I also went with 808 singing and rapping. He kind of is being able to be emotional and show your emotions was something that wasn't at the time popular, and he kind of very brought it to the forefront and stuff like that. I also said earlier, so I'm not going to get too much into that, but besides Lil Wayne, he's the biggest impact on this generation in terms of the sounds and the production, the type of music that's coming out. Besides Lil Wayne, I think he's the biggest influence. So next, that's just the music itself. So then fashion, I think fashion, he's had such a big influence on Yeezy, let alone the Nike Yeezy and then the Adidas Yeezy. Those are two of the biggest sneakers. Like the Red Octobers from Nike, or if you look on a sneaker resale website, they're still over like $10,000. So that's huge. And Adidas Yeezys, those are huge. Probably the biggest sneaker up there right now with, I would say, Jordans and Travis Scott's. Those are probably the 3 biggest sneakers out there. Skinny jeans, he was also very big on the, skinny jeans. Lil Wayne was, I think, a little more popular with that, but Kanye, skinny jeans was very big with him. The Louis Vuitton Don, he kind of, high fashion was always a thing in hip hop, but he just brought it to like another level. It was always about like Gucci, Louis Vuitton and like Versace. And then he just, all these other brands like Balenciaga and Tom Ford and Hermes and all these other, he just made high fashion like a thing in hip hop where rappers are trying to one up each other with the high fashion now. Pink polo, obviously we all know about the pink polo. It was huge coming up with that. And the backpacks and Stunna shades, those were all just like, because of him, they were big at that moment. So going into the sales, so Kanye, like I said earlier, is the 3rd highest selling rapper of all time behind Eminem and Drake. He has over 21 million albums sold and over 140 million units sold. So he's also just that big. And he was, besides Eminem and Drake, he's the highest selling, and to be that high selling, but also not, or very minimally affect the quality of your music is very, is rare, because Eminem is still very good quality music, but we talked about last week with Drake, it just feels the quality isn't there, and that kind of comes along with the territory when you get that big in any genre, not just hip hop. So Kanye's still not some people might disagree with me, but to be that, still have that quality of your music and still sell as much as you have, I think is a testament to how good of an artist he is and how influential he is. He's also had other artists would not be around or nearly as big as they would without his influence of, like I said, Drake and Travis Scott, even like a guy like Chance the Rapper, Big Sean, really just he put Big Sean on, and Childish Gambino also, it takes a lot of influence from Kanye in terms of the singing and the sounds. So I think those artists on top of, and these are just some of the big ones, but there's a plethora of other artists that also were influenced by him or might not be as big without his influence.
Yeah, like Cudi.
Cudi too, yeah, definitely. And then last two things. So to me, he seems almost untouchable, kind of how you said how Eminem's controversial. He's also just as controversial, but not maybe with the lyrics, more with his actions. I'll start with George Bush doesn't care about black people. Like, let alone, like, not many people might come back from that. So that the Taylor Swift VMAs debacle, that he might, not many people might not come back from that. Slavery was a choice when he said that a few years ago on TMZ. I don't know how he came back. I thought that might have been it. Then this next one, I thought was really it, the Donald Trump support. He's still just as relevant as he is with supporting Donald Trump, which a lot of people in the hip hop community and a lot of people in general just are anti-Trump. So to have that still go number one and still be as relevant to this day with supporting Donald Trump, whatever anyone's political view is a testament to how big he is. And also kind of more recently with bringing out DaBaby and Marilyn Manson at the third listening party, DaBaby with the comments he made recently about the LGBTQ plus community, and Marilyn Manson with the sexual assault charges, bringing them out and featuring him on his song. I think whatever you view on that is, I think for him to do that the 3 days before he released the album and still go number one is like, how can you not say how big he is? And like I said, he almost seems untouchable in that way, where he can, like I said, all of these things, not many artists would have done one or two of these things and still been relevant, let alone be as relevant as he is. But he's done all of these things over the past 15-ish years. So I think that just a testament to how well and how good his music is, that people like me will still ride with him after he's done all of these crazy things. And then the last thing is, this doesn't go into the influence as much, but I think I had to mention his live performances are some of the best in hip hop, let alone all of music. The production into it, not just how good he sounds, but also what he brings to his performances, to his tours, to his festivals, to his concerts. He just brings that art element and that performance element, not just a stage and a screen. He brings everything to it. And I've seen him a few times, but it's just been crazy and just brought such a performance element to just not just the rapping or the singing, just the whole stage design and everything. I think he thinks of everything. Like we said, he has a purpose to everything. So I think that to me is why all these reasons are why I think he's the most influential rapper of all time.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think 3 of your top 5 are like in my honorable mentions. So we were pretty close. I think absolutely he's totally influential. I think if you think about 808s, I think that might be one of, if not the most influential hip hop album ever, just because of not only what it did for hip hop and how it kind of changed like the narrative about like what you can rap about and kind of like the sound of it, but also just like you said, gave people a platform. Gave people a platform to either be an artist or to be a better version of themselves as an artist, So I feel like, and a lot of people, think that that's not like a great album. And I wouldn't say like it's one of the greatest albums of all time, but I think that in terms of like its influence on like, being able to give other artists like a chance to like explore themselves and kind of expand their craft. A lot of that has to do with that album. So and I would agree, like he's got tons of classic albums under his belt. Like I talked about Kendrick having 2 under his belt. Like you're right. Like Kanye has, I would say 5. I don't know if Yeezus I would consider a classic, but in terms of like College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, 808s, like, yeah, they're spot on. So I think he's got a huge influence on the culture. My number one, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I kind of talked about it when I talked about Kendrick, and you have this person in your list as well. And I agreed with a lot of things that you said. So for my number one, it's Tupac for me. Okay. I think of when you think of a person that all of other people in rap like aspire to and kind of look up to as like a big brother, like it's him. And I think you don't have to do much listening or much diving into the fact to understand that, because if you just look at some of his song titles, like Keep Your Head Up, Me Against the World, Brenda's Got a Baby, Changes, To Live and Die in LA, like those are all just like songs that just show like how big of an inspiration he was because of what he was trying to portray in his music. You know, he just had so many good ideas, and he may not have always had like the answers to like all of like the political problems that were going on or that he was addressing, but at least he like used his platform to like put it out there, and give people a chance to debate and talk and have an opinion about how our world is kind of like going and how we can make it better. And I feel like that's kind of like, that's always been his vision, was like to just like use rap to relay a message on how we can make this world a better place. He may not have always executed it perfectly because he was also gang affiliated. And it could have, I personally think that it resulted in his death, which I also think was kind of like, if you're a conspiracy theorist, I guess you can kind of believe it or not, but like, I think that his death and Biggie's death were kind of correlated and related to each other. So like, he may not have always like executed his vision perfectly, but when it came to like rapping and what I'm going to rap about, like, I want to use rap to make the world a better place. And so you can listen to all the songs and you can kind of get that idea from what he's saying. But to me, nothing sticks out more particularly than actually on Kendrick's last song of To Pimp a Butterfly, Mortal Man. And at the end of that, they do like that kind of like interview, and like that whole part of that song just says so much about who Tupac was and his legacy. And I just think that when you look at everybody in hip hop and even the other people that were on my list, the people that were on your list, like when you look at him, like, I don't think there's any better focal point to like somebody who is hip hop. You can say like there's a bunch of these people, like, they're a big influence on hip hop and the culture, but Tupac was hip hop. Like he was like he's the Tom Brady of hip hop. He's the Michael Jordan of hip hop. Like when you think hip hop, like the first thing that comes into your head probably is Tupac. And so I just think that's just a lot of like what he has done and why he's so influential. And to me, like, I don't think he's the greatest rapper of all time. Like somebody who's not on my list, like Biggie. Like I think Biggie might have been a better rapper than Tupac, but I just think Tupac, like what he did with his rapping and kind of like his whole vision on how he wanted to be perceived in the industry, speaks a lot. And it's a big influence to a lot of other people in hip hop today who are trying to accomplish that same goal. So I feel like he kind of gave them like a road to follow, and a lot of people are following that road. So that's what I have to say about Tupac. And to me, he's the most influential rapper in all of hip hop.
And that's hard to disagree with. I definitely, like, he was on my list. But a lot of the stuff you said, and obviously a lot of the stuff I said, he definitely, I think, on any list should be in someone's top 5. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to quickly reiterate my list, and then you'll reiterate yours, and then we'll go over the end of show stuff. Cool. All right. So my list was number 5 was Lil Kim, 4 was Tupac, 3 was Lil Wayne, 4 was 2 is Jay-Z, and 1 was Kanye West. So what was your list again?
Awesome. So my list was at number 5 was Eminem. And then at number 4, I had Lauryn Hill. And then my third was Kendrick. And then the last 2, I had Nas at number 2, and then Tupac at number 1.
Awesome. So guys, after you see this episode, tweet at us, comment at us what your top 5 most influential rappers is. We'd love to hear feedback from anyone. So now we're going to get into the end of the show. So Kyle actually hit me up with this yesterday, this topic, and I thought it was great because we're just starting out, but it will get more, this topic will get bigger at the end of the year and around Grammy season 2. Album of the year in hip hop so far. So Kyle said this, and I was like, you know what, this actually is great. We'll add this little tidbit at the end. So I wrote down 4 albums that were in contention for me, and then obviously I'll tell you which one. is my album of the year so far. So top 4 to me are Off Season by J. Cole, The Melodic Blue by Baby Keem, which I mentioned to you last week, The Voice of the Heroes, Lil Baby and Lil Durk, and Donda by Kanye West. So to me, the album of the year so far is The Melodic Blue by Baby Keem. I cannot stop listening to this. I put on Donda and CLB a lot recently, and then I'm always going back to The Melodic Blue by Baby Keem. So that to me is the best album. He's a mix because he's cousins with Kendrick, a mix of, to me, Kendrick and Kanye, which are 2 of my favorites. So to me, how can I not like it? So to me, that's the best album of the year so far. How about you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about it too, and I have 3. I'm not going to say what the other 2 are, just because like that my top 3 might still be the same by the end of the year. So I kind of want to leave you on a little surprise there, but for me, I would agree that like Voice of the Heroes by Lil Durk and Lil Baby. Like I love that one. I think that's the most like that's the hip hop album from this year that I just keep revisiting a lot more. I think that both of them just complement each other so well on that.
Yeah.
And I think the production's like nothing spectacular, but I feel like it gets the job done and it fits both of like who they are. It's got some good features, not a lot, but like, it's got, Travis Scott, Meek Mill to list like a few there. And I feel like this is an album where like I'm gonna revisit more of Lil Baby, because like his flow on some of these tracks, like 2040 and How It Feels, like it's so infectious. Like his flow is just ridiculous. And
I love what's the song? That's Facts. Oh, that's one of my favorite songs on that. I love his verse on his chorus on that.
Yeah, so I like his flow, and I think one thing that stands out for me with Lil Durk is like his ability to like rap in like a sing-songy kind of voice. And like that's prime like what's happening on this album too, and he's like got a catchy way of like presenting his rap. So for me, that's my favorite hip hop album of the year. So
awesome. All right, so next we're going to talk about I'll do the review for Forever Is a Mighty Long Time. So as I mentioned last week, I've never really listened to Big Crit, like at least a project. I've heard features or maybe a single or 2. So I thought this is a very good album. I actually really liked it a lot. It has, as I'm getting older, I'm appreciating more that traditional Southern hip hop, and this is straight like 2006 Southern hip hop, but like not like that, like A Bay and all that, like real like Ludacris, T.I., that style, UGK, and I think he did really good job at that with this album. Some of my standout songs to me are Confetti, Big Bank with T.I., Subinstein, I love that one. Ride With Me featuring UGK, Price of Fame, and Bury Me in Gold, I think the last track. I think so, and there's no bad songs on the album to me. I actually like the song with CeeLo a lot as well, CeeLo Green. I think it's a really good album, and so like you mentioned it to me because we were talking about the other 2 albums were so long that this album's long, but it never got boring. It kept me interested the whole time. So when an album's long, that obviously that plays a factor. If you can keep me entertained or if you can't, and this one definitely did. I really enjoyed it. I've listened to it over a handful of times, and I really liked it. The first part, and tell me if I'm wrong, because you said it's like, and it's 11 and 11, I think. The first part is about being a rapper and being rich, and the second part's about being humble and recognizing that there's more to life.
Right.
Is that is that exactly it, or is there am I a little off?
No, you're actually like spot on. I think it's important to note too. So like the first song on the first side is actually called Big Crit. So I think the first side is kind of more like he's like making music from like his standpoint as a rapper. And then the second side, the first track is called Justin Scott, which is his actual name.
So I think that makes sense.
I think those songs on the second side are kind of like more like personal, like who he is as a person, which is what I like most about the album is like you basically see both sides of him,
his persona and then him as a person.
Yeah, right.
That's really cool. So that's I guess I was pretty spot on with that. So the last thing I wanted to say about that is he's very underrated. He should be bigger than he is. I remember him, what is that, 20? I remember hearing him in 2011, 10 years ago on, I don't know if it was the first time, but it was one of the first times. It was on One Train on A$AP Rocky's Long Live A$AP. Right. He killed that too. So He's very underrated. He should be bigger than he is, but I will be listening to more of his stuff. Definitely. I'm a fan of him now.
Yeah, he's got some other good stuff. I think this one is probably his best album. He does have some other good albums, and he has some good mixtapes. And yeah, I just really love it. I love how the first side, it's got like bangers. Like most of them are like bangers, like the songs you said, like Confetti and Big Bang, Subbenstein. Like I love Subbenstein. Like that's one of my favorite songs. But then like towards the second half, it's more it's like deeper, and it's more personal, and it's a little bit more depressing. Like one of my favorite songs actually on the second side is called Drinking Sessions, and I feel like that one is just like so deep, and like you really like believe his pain sometimes on that song. So yeah, it's just a great album. It does run a little bit long, but like you said, it's never boring. And I think it's very underrated. Like people don't talk about it the way they talk about, Drake albums and Kanye albums and Kendrick albums. Like, he's right up there with like, I would say he's kind of on the same level as J. Cole when it comes to rapping. So I just find him interesting.
Yeah, I was telling Amanda this after I listened to it like once or twice. I was like, it's funny because they're both Southern, but I said he reminds me of the Southern J. Cole, because J. Cole, he's obviously from North Carolina, but he's, he always talks about New York, so he doesn't sound as Southern, and his sound isn't as Southern as well. Big Crit is definitely, like I said, that traditional Southern sound. Right. And the accent as well. So like I said he's like a Southern J. Cole, but that's what he reminds me of. So I like the album a lot. I think it's a really good album.
Good. I'm glad you liked it, man.
Yeah. So now I'm going to give you an album, and I don't think you've ever listened to him or this album. Obviously this album, if you never listened to him. Okay. Question Mark by XXX Tentacion. Wow.
No. I actually never had any interest in it, but I will do it for you.
I like this album a lot.
Yeah.
It's good. It's different, but when I talk about Kanye, you can feel his emotions. He's an artist that I almost better than anyone. You can really feel his emotions. So that is your album for the week, and then we'll review it on next week's episode. So Question Mark by XXX Tentacion. All right. So sounds good. One last thing before we get out of here, next week's topic. So we talked about this before the show, so I'll let you share it.
What were you doing again? what was the idea? Man. We were going to do like the eras, right? Like which era of hip hop was better. So so our episode next week will be about like, I'll pick a decade. You'll pick a decade. I'm pretty sure we're going to disagree, because I think we've kind of had a conversation about it before. But we're going to pick like which decade we thought is the best in hip hop. And then we're just going to kind of debate as to like kind of why we feel that way. So that'll be next week's episode.
So next week's episode will be which era was the best, essentially, which era we think is the best. Right. And like he said, I already know we're going to have two different eras that we think. So this will be a good debate we'll have. Yeah. Do you have anything else before we wrap up?
No, just thanks for watching. Thanks for having me on. This was a good conversation, and looking forward to next week's episode already. So,
hey, you don't have to thank me. We're co-hosts now. You don't have to thank me for having you on. It's just as much your show as it is mine now. So thank you everyone who is watching, who's listening. As always, follow us on Twitter at We Debate Hip Hop. Follow us on Instagram at The Hip Hop Debate, and subscribe on YouTube at The Hip Hop Debate. The last week's episode is already up. This episode is up as well when you're watching this, obviously. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week, and send any questions, any comments, anything you want us to talk about. We'd love to hear back from anyone who's listening, our fans. And that'll be it for this week. So we'll see you guys next week. Deuces.
Peace.